Your favorite PGA and LPGA legends, pros and top instructors are right here every week on Next on the Tee. Join Chris as the greats of the game share their stories, insights and playing lessons. Now, back to Chris and more of the show.
All right, now back with me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is Champions Tour pro Bob Estes. Let me remind you a little bit about Bob's background. He is from Graham, Texas. Played his college golf at the University of Texas from 1984 to 1988, where he was a 3-time All-American and a 4-time All-Southwest Conference selection. He won the 1988 Haskins Award, which is presented annually to the most outstanding collegiate golfer in the nation. He helped the Longhorns win 3 tournaments in the 86-87 season and 3 more in the 87-88 year. In all, he won 6 times while he was at Texas. At the 1985 Pan American Intercollegiate Tournament, the Morris Williams Tournament twice in 87 and 88. He also won the Harvey Penick Intercollegiate Tournament in 87, and he won the Border Olympics and Rafael Alcon Intercollegiate Tournaments back in 1988. In 1999, Bob was inducted into the University of Texas Hall of Honor. He joined the PGA Tour in 1989 and was named Rookie of the Year by Golf Magazine. He earned his first tour win at the 1994 Texas Open, thanks in part to an opening round 62, and he led that tournament wire to wire. In all, he's won 4 times on the PGA Tour. In addition to the Texas Open, he won the 2001 Invensys Classic in Las Vegas, the 2001 FedEx St. Jude Classic, and the 2002 Kemper Open. On top of those 4 wins, he has 10 runner-up finishes, 8 third-place finishes, and 205 top 25s. On the Champions Tour, he's had 9 top 10 finishes so far, including a third-place finish earlier this season at the Oasis Championship, and last weekend tied for 15th at the Hogue Championship, and I'm very excited. He is back with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Good evening, Bob. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, Chris. Glad to join you.
So, Bob, first, before we get into all the golf stuff, I got to get your thoughts on your Texas Longhorns in football. Finished ranked 9th last season, 10-4 season, nice win over Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Is Texas back? Are we going to see the Longhorns back in the top 10 and fighting for a playoff now?
I think so now. We weren't for sure during the season, but I guess deeper into the season, they definitely started playing a lot better and then capped it off with that big win against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. So just like Sam Ellinger said, I think we're back.
Bob, I want to get you where obviously we're on the heels now of the Arnold Palmer Invitational last weekend, and you've had some success playing in that event. You tied for second in 98 just behind Ernie Els. Want to get your recollections of being out there at Bay Hill and your memories of playing in that event, plus of Mr. Palmer.
Yeah, that was always a special event to play in. You know, it was one of the invitationals, so it was a little bit more difficult to qualify for, you know, than just a regular PGA Tour event. Not everybody got to play. I think you had to be on in the top 70 on the either current money list or the previous year's money list to qualify for that one, and so you had to play to a higher standard. So I wasn't in it every year, but I remember playing it a number of years, and it was always special to be there and to see Mr. Palmer in the locker room and around and on the golf course. And so, yeah, I did have that runner-up finish that one year and always enjoyed playing there.
And speaking of Mr. Palmer, Bob, you got the opportunity to play with him, be paired with him at the 2004 Masters, his last Masters appearance. Boy, that had to be something special.
It was. I'd gotten to know a number of the committee members at Augusta National, and so that was quite an honor to be selected to be one of the ones that was chosen to play with him in his last Masters. I believe Nathan Smith was I just making sure I have the correct last name, who was the mid-amateur champ. He was the other member of our group for those 2 days. And so, yeah, it was quite special. I think we had pretty good weather for the 2 days. And so it was, you know, everybody was out and excited to watch Mr. Palmer, and he was excited to see them. And he would usually hit a shot and then walk over near the ropes where he was able to, you know, visit with people that had been coming to watch him play for, 50 plus years.
When you're walking that final time with Mr. Palmer, what was it like for you? Were you interacting, getting the opportunity to talk to him and remembering his event, or are you locked in at that point because it's not a practice round? To you, it means a lot. To him, it was a ceremonial round. But how did you deal with trying to have your own score and be a part of the Masters, but also soak in the experience with Mr. Palmer?
Well, it was a little bit difficult, but I'm glad that I got to experience it. I can't remember everything about the 2 days, obviously, and I was very focused on trying to win the Masters because I had come close in 1999 when I tied for fourth. I wasn't playing quite as well at the time in 2004, and as it turns out, it was my last Masters as well, or at least up to now. But yeah, it was a great experience. I remember talking to Sam a lot. A couple of things happened, during those 2 days. I can't remember if both incidents happened on the same day or not, but Mr. Palmer told us not to tell anybody. So I'm not at liberty to tell those stories yet until Sam gives me permission to. So that's something just between me and Sam and my caddy Chuck at this point. But yeah, but I was very focused. I was certainly, prepared as best I could be at the time. And I remember having to make par on the last hole just to make the cut. And that's definitely a cut that you do not want to miss at the Masters. Everybody wants to not just play the Masters, but play the weekend as well. And so I parred the last and got to play the weekend. And yeah, it was a great week.
And just to expound just a little bit on your Masters experience, what's it like? Getting the opportunity, you drive up Magnolia Lane, you're part of the Masters, the history, the golf course itself, and everything that goes along with it. Is it different than any other place? Is it different than playing in the other majors? What's it like being a part of the Masters field?
Oh, it's amazing. From the very first time that I went there, it's almost hard to put into words, but it's just it seems like the week of the Masters, it seems almost like the world stopped. And so everybody's in such a cheerful mood. And there's just no place else that any of us would rather be the week of the Masters. Just such a beautiful setting for a golf course. Everybody's so nice and so respectful of the players and the members and the game of golf in general. It's just such an amazing week every year.
And as you talked about, you finished tied for fourth in 99. So I'm imagining you're going to bed after the third round on Saturday night, and you're only a couple of strokes back. Are you thinking to yourself, "Oh my God"?
Well, yeah, but up to that point, I'd always hoped and planned on winning the Masters, and so I was looking forward to it, and I was playing well at the time, and my short game was probably as sharp as it had ever been, and so I'm sure I hit it, good enough, but my short game was really, really sharp that week. And I remember in particular, on that back nine, I believe I made 8 pars and a birdie, but I was all over the hole and just could not get it to go down. So things could have turned out differently, but it was still a great experience.
So Bob, this week we look ahead to the Players Championship, and you played in that tournament many times. What are some of your memories of being a part of that great golf tournament?
The thing about the Players Championship is just how difficult it usually is. Now, I guess when they moved to the springtime or moved to May, in 2007, typically the golf course, it may be played firmer and faster, but the weather can play havoc with that tournament, as we've seen in the past. And so the weather does dictate a lot as far as how that course and tournament, play out. But it's a tournament that I played well at times, and a tournament that I really struggled at times. So I looked up some of my finishes, and I think my best finish was a tie for 15th in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. But I also noticed that there were a couple of scores that I shot in the 80s as well. So I played a lot in the spring. More of my Players Championships were, from 1990 through 2006. There might have been, or 2005 or 6. Yeah, I'm trying to remember one of those years in there. I think I wasn't exempt and missed. But yeah, you get a lot of those cold fronts that are still maybe pushing through in March. And you can get some pretty strong north winds. So I remember playing in some really bad weather at times, whether it was rain or wind or both. And that really makes it interesting on those last couple of holes, 17 and 18.
And speaking of 17, is that the most nerve-wracking tee shot in golf?
Probably so. I'm sure there's a few others, but as far as just the 16th at in Phoenix at TPC Scottsdale, that's pretty nerve-wracking as well. But you missed the green there, and you don't have to re-tee. It's very nerve-wracking, and so you have to really focus and try to calm yourself down and just hit the shot. And for the most part, you're almost always just playing to the center of the green there. But even the center of the green is hard to hit with a wedge or 9 or 8 iron when your heart is beating that fast and you're maybe playing into a 10, 15, 20 mile an hour wind or a crosswind. So it's and obviously all those people watching, with that amphitheater setting. So yeah, it's a really nerve-wracking shot.
What's the best and worst shot, whether it was you or somebody else that you might have been playing with? What's the best shot you've seen there? What's the worst shot you've seen?
Well, obviously we see a lot of the replays of guys that have made hole-in-ones, or the shot where I think Fred hit it in the water and then either re-teed it or went to the drop circle and hold it for a 3. And I actually did that once. I don't remember what year it was, but one of those years I hit it in the water, went to the drop circle, and then hold my 3rd shot for a par. So that was pretty cool. Can't remember how I did that particular year, but yeah, we've seen all kinds. You've seen the shots that in particular where guys hit it, they hit it perfectly solid and they're posing on it, and it doesn't even land on the green. Typically, it might fly over the back, or one hop, off the back of the green into the water. And so I've hit a number of balls in the water there. I was actually glad to hear about the tournament moving back to the spring, because every week of the Players Championship, they always flash up that balls in the water leaderboard for career or going back to a certain year. And I think Bob Tway is leading that, and I think I might still be in 2nd place. So I was glad to hear they're moving back to March. So I'm hoping that some of the veteran players will, get wet a time or two, maybe bump me down the list, or maybe I'll move off of that list at some point, and I won't have to be reminded of it every year.
That's great. Bob, switching gears a little bit, all the rage right now on golf radio has been about the rules changes, particularly the new drop rule. What do you and your peers out on the Champions Tour, what do you guys think about it?
I don't think too many guys have, on the Champions Tour at least, too much trouble with the drop, except maybe for the guys with, bad backs. But I remember at the U.S. Senior Open last year talking to somebody with the USGA about the proposed drop and how we might be changing that. And, my suggestion was just anywhere between shoulder height and knee height. It's like, why does it have to be so precise? Especially when you're able to often drop the ball anywhere within 2 club lengths or 1 club length, depending on the drop or the rule at the time. But that obviously didn't get either passed on or accepted, because now we're just dropping at knee height. So it's not that big a deal. I kind of understand why they did it, but that one is just not as big a deal as maybe some of the other rules changes that I might disagree with.
So to that end, what are some of the other ones you've looked at and you're scratching your head going, I don't get this?
The one in particular that I don't agree with is the one about a damaged club. Not damaged out of anger, but maybe you just, you're hitting shot up against a tree and the shaft breaks, or you're hitting one of obviously these drivers with very thin faces, the faces crack. And so on the PGA Tour and on the Champions Tour, we're usually able to quickly have a replacement club in our bag. A rules official might have to go and grab one of the locker and bring it back out to us. But that's something that I disagree with as far as the new rule. I think that, we should be able to, replace a driver. We almost always have, exact replicas of the first team driver that we play, or, putter, sandwich, 3-wood, whatever. And so I think that, we should have still been able to, replace those clubs. I tweeted, a couple weeks ago about a scenario. Imagine if Tiger Woods was, had a 1-shot lead, or anybody else, teeing off the last round of the Masters, right there next to the clubhouse, let's say, and the opening tee shot, the face of his driver cracks. He could easily just walk, steps in the locker room and grab the back of that driver, but that's no longer allowed. So he'd be playing the last round of the Masters without a driver or a driver he'd be comfortable with hitting. He could still maybe hit it, but who knows where the ball might go. So that's one of the rules I do, or one of the rule changes I disagree with.
What about the flag stick? Are you using the flag stick in the cup, or are you old school still pulling it out?
I'm doing both. And one thing that I explain to people is a lot of times, don't forget, from long range, we've always had the flag stick tended. So it's not so much about the flag being in versus out and whether the ball's going to the flag stick and, stay in or bounce away or whatever. A lot of times it has to do with just perception, being able to see better. So on longer putts in particular, I'll just have my caddy leave the flag in. No need to, I could have him obviously tended and remove it, but for the most part, on longer putts, and other players in the Champions Tour have been doing the same thing. We just leave the flag in from longer distance. Just so we can also just, see and judge the distance better. So some guys will still leave it in for shorter putts, but not very often on the Champions Tour. Seems like most of the guys do it kind of like I do it. We'll leave it in on the longer putts and take it out on the shorter putts. Sometimes the guy might roll it up there a few inches and still just go ahead and tap it in with the flag in. But usually when we're putting, anywhere inside, 20 feet, guys do it kind of like we have in the past and just have the caddy remove the flag stick. Not often are you going to hit a putt so hard that you'd have to worry about the flag stick actually slowing your ball down. That's kind of how we go about that on the Champions Tour. Most guys anyway.
Bob, just a couple more before we let you go, and I want to get your thoughts on golf equipment. It has certainly come a long ways since your late 80s when you first started getting out on the PGA Tour. How much better is it now than from when you started? And are you driving the ball the same distance that you were? You're 53 now. Driving the same distance as you were when you were 23 and 33? Oh,
no, I'm hitting the ball much further. So are the rest of the guys on the Champions Tour. Before, it's not just about the golf ball. It's a combination of all those factors. The solid core balls, the hot faces or thin faces, and graphite shafts. So that's one of the things that's, not talked about as often. I have a couple different drivers that I play depending on the golf courses or the day of, the tournament or whatever. I have a longer driver that's about 45 inches, which I use a 60-gram shaft in, and my shorter driver, which is about 44 inches, has a 70-gram shaft. So so what I was going to say is because of the weight of the clubs and being able to make them longer and having the ability to swing them faster and generate more club head speed, it's just a whole lot different than what it was in the past when we were playing wooden woods and heavy steel shafts, straight through the back. So, a combination of all those factors allows us to hit the ball quite a bit further than we did, when we were quite a bit younger.
And Bob, as you look out for the rest of the 2019 season, what do you have goals set for yourself? What are you trying to achieve? What are you hoping for out of this year?
Well, this is my first year that I'm planning on playing just straight Champions Tour events and playing a full schedule. The last couple of years, because of the major medical that I still had from a shoulder impingement I developed in 2013, I was splitting time with both tours. I did finish up last year playing mostly pretty much just on the Champions Tour, but and just barely missed the final event by one shot, basically playing in those 15 events. But this year, I'll play 23 or 4 or 5 or whatever. There's 27 events total, but a couple of them, or at least the first one, I was not eligible for. So the Charles Schwab Cup is something that I would certainly love to win, just like everybody else that's out there. Playing a full schedule to try to achieve that goal. And if I don't win it, I'm still trying to finish just as high as I can at that points list at the end of the year.
Bob, before we let you go, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things you're doing and follow you, whether it's online or it's on social media?
Most people that do know me know that I spend probably too much time on Twitter, but I am on Twitter a lot, Bob Estes PGA. We talk a lot of golf and politics. And then I'm maybe getting on Instagram just a little bit more. I think that's Bob A. Estes on Instagram. So maybe I'll spend a little bit more time on that. I actually was on it a little bit today, but more so on Twitter. So that's where you'll get more information and maybe get to know me a little bit better.
Well, Bob, it's always great having you as part of the show. You're a great guest, and I always enjoy our conversation and listening to you talk about your stories and your insights. I can't thank you enough for coming back and being generous with your time tonight. I hope you'll come back and join me again real soon.
I will. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Bob. All the best to your family. Take care.
Okay, thank you. You too.
That is Bob Estes, and wow, what a great story! In Mr. Palmer's last Masters, he gets paired with him and gets to spend those 2 rounds with him. What an unbelievable story! And I'll tell you, Bob, like I say, is off to a great start on the Champions Tour. He's played in 4 tournaments, and he's got 3 top 15s, including a top 3 here recently. So doing great stuff. I really look forward to catching up with Bob, having him back on the show, and really following his success all season out there on the Champions Tour.